Hey guys, it's Elon from Inside Fighting, and you are in for a good one. This is a martial art that I am absolutely in love with, so stay tuned. We're going to talk about combat Sambo today. It's been a long time coming, but here we go.
Pow pow, inside fighting, yeah, dangerous martial arts. Pow pow, ooh ah.
All right, before I get started, go to InsideFightingStore.com. Check out some of the instructionals. I'm making some more, guys. I'm making some more instructionals, so give it some time. I busted up my leg. I'm recovering. Now I'm tattooing my whole leg like a maniac. But go to InsideFightingStore.com. Check out what I got there. I got some cool merch. And you know what? If you don't want to go there, then just like and subscribe and comment. That'll mean a lot too. All right, let's just jump right in. Combat Sambo. Now, look, I have some experience with Sambo. I'm going to just play in the background as I talk some footage of Khabib Nurmagomedov. Old school. This is MMA world champion Khabib, one of the best fighters in history. Here we go. This is him starting out in Combat Sambo, getting kicked in the head really hard there. Okay. Now, let me just forward a little bit here. All you guys who talk about Khabib and saying he doesn't know how to strike, you know, he's just a great wrestler. The guy started off in Combat Sambo. Now, what we have to understand about Combat Sambo and what makes Combat Sambo such an effective style, and in my opinion, probably the best foundational martial art to transition into MMA, probably one of the best martial arts for self-defense, probably one of the best martial arts for combat sports. So all around, one of the best martial arts, period, across the board. Combat Sambo's unique in the sense that it is an entirely outside of weapons, and Combat Sambo guys do use weapons too if you train it. They do learn real self-defense tactics, but let's just look at the sport aspect of Combat Sambo. It's one of the only fully transitional systems out there that offers all the strikes, all the ranges, all the seamless transitions that you would need for a real life situation. There are other systems. There's things like Kudo is another one that comes to mind, but Kudo, you have that giant helmet on your head. Combat Sambo, you have just a headgear, or in some places in Russia, they just don't even bother and they allow you to headbutt each other full force because Russians are hardcore. So why is that so important? Why is it so important that when you train a martial art, that you have seamless transitions in that style itself? Okay, he pulled off a beautiful armbar there. Why is that so relevant? Why do I place such an emphasis on seamless transitions always over and over and over and over? Well, if you look at MMA, if you look at some of the best MMA fighters, look at George St. Pierre, what made him effective? If you look at John Jones, what makes him effective? What makes fighters effective is transitional fighting. It's not that they're just necessarily a great striker or a great wrestler. It's their ability to focus on the transitions. If they're a good wrestler or great wrestler, they're able to go from striking to wrestling seamlessly. They don't have that mental switch, so they can use their striking to connect their takedowns. The problem with a lot of MMA schools, and even till today, the way a lot of guys train, is they train in individual aspects of fighting. I'm going to be a great striker, and then I'm going to learn takedown defense separately, and then I'm going to learn takedown separately, and then my jiu-jitsu is separate, and everything in your mind has a place, but they're in boxes. They're in categories. And so your mind has to create a shift when the fight changes. In other words, when you go from striking to clinch, now you go, oh, I'm in clinch fighting. And then a takedown happens and you go, oh, now I'm in takedown fighting. The thing about Combat Sambo is that from day one, every aspect of fighting is transitioning into the next. Your striking is always taught as an entry for clinch, which is always taught as an entry for takedown, which is always taught to continue into submission or control to cause damage. And if you think about fighting that way, it's a lot quicker. Combat Sambo, if you look, just look at Khabib fighting here. It's a lot faster, a lot more wild, but a lot more representative of what a real fight on the street looks like. And also, additionally, I mean, you're allowed to knee on the ground there, something you can't do in MMA. Headbutt, something you can't do in MMA. But what that gives you is the ability to become a transitional fighter who is seamless. You won't have those little fractures in your game where you're punching and then the guy clinches you and you go, oh, okay, now we're stalling here in the clinch. You know how you see a lot of stalled fighting in MMA? You didn't really see that much with Khabib, right? You just saw him kind of drag people down to the ground. It didn't stay against the cage for 45 minutes. It's because he's always been the type of guy, if you look at his fights from a young age, his Combat Sambo background, even his wrestling background, is highly aggressive. It has the intention of taking you to where the fight will end. I find combat Sambo guys are incredible at this. They're incredible at understanding striking into takedowns, but more importantly, and I'll show you this soon, let's just fast forward a little bit here. Khabib lost this fight, by the way. Look at the sportsmanship. The guy picks him up. Let's just go back here. Oh, no, this fight's still going on. I'll let you guys watch it. But this is a fight that he loses. Man, that guy is throwing hard kicks, hard punches. But you look at that beautiful, beautiful shot under the punch into a takedown. The Khabib rolls with it to get on top. It's exactly what you want to see in a style. You want to see all this movement, these transitions, not these stalled positions. I mean, you think about a lot of MMA fights that are boring. It's because of stalled positions. In a street fight, you can't really have that. Someone will come and kick you in the head. Someone will come and stomp you, or they may stab you. You look at combat Sambo fights, they're quick. Bam, 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 bam. That's another good thing also about Kudo, which, again, is very similar in my mind to this. Kudo is very fast. And if you want a style to teach you how to fight on the street, it has to be fast. It has to emphasize aggression. I'll just fast forward. But again, this is the fight that he lost. And I would say, again, that's what makes Sambo guys such good fighters, such aggressive good fighters in MMA. Never mind the fact that they're all Eastern European and maniacs. I feel like there's something about like the Dagestani lifestyle and genetics growing up in like the mountains, fighting bears. But beyond that, the martial art reflects a complete system. So, look, I'm a big fan of traditional martial arts. I'm a big fan of saying like, hey, you're a purist in something, you're amazing at something, and then you go transition out and you do other things. Like I always say, Kyokushin for me is a great system. You can cross-train with other things, right? You can cross-train your Kyokushin with Judo. I think that's a cool mix, which essentially becomes Ashihara or Enshin. And you really think about old school Kyokushin was, most of them were black belts in Judo. But what's the problem there? The same exact thing I said. The problem when you look at fighting that way is that if you then go continue to train Kyokushin in a school where you're just doing your stand-up punching and sparring, and you're not allowed to grip, you're not allowed to trip, and then you go to Judo and you train just your grabbing without punches and your throws, your mind has two completely different places for those two systems. And until you combine them and train them together extensively, your mind will not connect them. I want to jump ahead to a video here. Okay, like Khabib, by the way, this just shows that Khabib, as much as the reason I showed this is because as much as people think of Khabib as just a wrestler, he's not. He's a combat Sambo guy, which means he has a striking background and, more importantly, defending against strikes. And that's why he was so effective in the UFC. Wrestling on its own is starting. You know, everyone always used to believe wrestling was the most important thing for MMA. Very, very important. A grappling foundation is what we realized is very, very important in MMA. Doesn't have to be wrestling, but what people are starting to see with wrestling, the reason a lot of strikers are doing very well now in the UFC, a lot of champions, Sean O'Malley, striker, Volkanovski, mostly a striker, obviously does takedowns, but he's a complete MMA guy. Ilia Topuria is a jiu-jitsu guy, but what we're seeing him win with is striking. We're seeing a lot of people win with striking. You look at Adesanya for a long time, striker. Leon Edwards until he just lost to Bilal Muhammad, striker. I can keep going down the list. There's a lot of strikers, even Sean Strickland, Duplessis. So you're starting to see the rise of strikers in the UFC. Bilal Muhammad is kind of like a Khabib style where he just punches you in the face a lot into a takedown, but he does have good transitional fighting because he does use his fists to set up his takedowns and confuse you, even though he's the most boring fighter in the world. Apologies for saying that. If you're a Bilal fan, I just don't enjoy watching him fight. Regardless, what we're starting to see is the rise of strikers because a lot of wrestling guys have the problem of either trying to stand and trade with you and then break, I'm going to shoot in, which indicates to the striker, okay, there's a takedown coming. I'm going to sprawl. I'm going to defend. And they're able to defend takedowns better than they have in the past. Or they just try and continuously take you down, which is a very limited approach to fighting because they haven't done this type of training where it's transitional from day one. They're striking again and they're wrestling, and I'm hammering in this point, are not seamless. They're not interconnected. This is probably one of the most important things about Sambo. And if we look here, there's a great video here. Look, this is Jeff Chan. Jeff Chan's an awesome MMA guy. You guys have heard me say nice things about him in the past. He's fighting a combat Sambo guy here. And if you just look at how dynamic their fight is, and kudos to Jeff Chan. Look, anyone who can hang in there with Jeff Chan and is not coming from an MMA background is incredibly impressive. Jeff Chan is kind of in an elite league, in my opinion, of fighting. So, and by the way, I'll put his link below. But you got to give credit to anyone who can pull off slick moves against Jeff Chan. And what the Sambo guy is doing is managing to be very slick in transition from striking into numerous takedown chains. So this is the next point I want to make. I know I'm doing a lot of points in this video. Chaining your takedowns. Combat Sambo guys, in my opinion, are among the best at chaining takedowns. They're among the best at transitioning from one position to another for achieving the final takedown. They're not as headstrong as wrestlers. A lot of wrestlers will just drive. They have a drive mentality, aggressive mentality. Drive, take you down, double leg into maybe one transition, two transition. But the best wrestlers are chain wrestlers. Combat Sambo's approach by nature is a chain wrestling approach. And I think maybe that's because of the influence of judo, with the influence of folk wrestling, just how the martial art developed as a very chain wrestling approach. But you could see, again, everything I talked about, his punches always have the intention of clinching into takedown, and he's very reactive. Just, again, beautifully done. I want to see if I could find this video here. I didn't save it. Damn it. Give me 1 second, guys. Give me 1 second. But again, this is just a beautiful, beautiful display of combat Sambo against MMA, against a high-level MMA guy, in my opinion. You could see he has a complete game, a complete system. I just can't say enough good stuff about combat Sambo. Can't say enough good stuff. All right. I'm going to pause this video, but you'll see he's going for a reverse triangle, which was very slick, and he gets it. You'll rarely see combat Sambo guys do that. Combat Sambo guys, one thing I will say is that they don't focus on chokes. They don't focus on as much in the sport itself. Choking was considered unsportsmanlike. Meanwhile, heel hooks and knee bars are, completely acceptable and encouraged. So ripping apart someone's knee is okay, but not choking them out. All right, so what I'm going to show next is probably one of the most important parts of combat Sambo. And you'll find what I'm about to show in systems like Sanda, I would say, is a great system for this. Kudo, again, combat Sambo. But there's not many martial arts that teach you this very effectively. And this is one of the main differences, by the way, from pure grappling styles in Sambo. What I'm going to show you is defense against strikes into takedowns. This is, again, part of the system. So let's just add it in here. And let's just look at it. Because when you become effective at reading punches into takedowns, you're a lot more effective at taking people down, especially in reality-based situations or combat sports where strikes are allowed. One of the big problems, if you look at pure wrestling, is that, and Jeff Chan's promoting his DVD here, so go give him some love. Again, like I said, I'm using his video, so description down below. But if you look at one of the big problems at pure grappling styles, is they're teaching you how to grapple against a grappler. It's why people say wrestling is so much different than MMA. If you take an MMA guy and put him in wrestling, he's going to get killed, right? Even a high-level MMA guy. But if you take a wrestler and put them into MMA, they could also get killed if they don't get good at transitional fighting. One of the nice things about combat Sambo is they're not just teaching you how to wrestle against a wrestler. They're not teaching you to take down someone who's trying to take you down back or trying to be defensive. They're teaching you to take down someone who's actively trying to hit you. This might not seem like a big deal. It's actually easier to take down people who are trying to hit you, believe it or not, because they're giving you such forward momentum, such pressure. But if you don't train it, you're going to get hit in the face. You're going to get caught. And so you need to train someone punching at you, someone kicking you, someone being dynamic in terms of their strikes, and then taking them down off their strikes. That is part of training. But it's a huge part of training that's missed if you go into a pure grappling style. It's very rare nowadays you go into a Brazilian jiu-jitsu school and they give you someone gloves and they say, this guy's going to punch you in the head a lot, and you have to sneak your way in, clinch him, and take him down and submit him while they're trying to punch you. It's not rare in a combat Sambo class. It's probably still rare in judo. I doubt you go to many judo schools and see that. Like I said, one of the only other places you'll see this a lot is in Sanda, because Sanda, and one of the compliments I gave to Sanda when I did the video on it, is it's such a transitional style. So in Sanda, you'll see incredibly slick takedowns of someone kicking you or punching you. It's a whole different game in itself, right? There's different aspects to takedowns. There's taking down someone who is actively resisting you from a grappling perspective, but not attacking you back. Then there's taking down someone, so like a highly defensive grappler, which is that's the hardest person to take down. The hardest person to take down is someone who's not trying to take you down, but is just trying to defend your takedown. That's the hardest person to take down. Then someone who's actively trying to take you down back often leaves openings to get caught for a takedown. So you'll even see this in judo. Some guys just stiff arm you, and it's very hard to take them down. It's very hard to work past them. They just kind of hold you in place. Whereas someone who's more fluid and moving and actively trying to fight back, that's where the engagements happen. So that's the second category. Then the third would be you attacking somebody with strikes into a takedown, because then they cover up, right? So when I punch you, when I move, when I kick you, what I do is I create a reaction. That reaction is defending the strike. If you don't defend the strike, you get punched in the head, and then I'll just take you down anyway. But usually when your hand comes up to defend, if I throw a hard hook into a double, what I'm doing is I'm creating the reaction up high so I can go low, right? And that's what that allows you to do and allows you to train. You learn to create the reactions you want. But then there's something called reactive takedowns to strikes. Reactive takedown, so that's an active striking takedown versus a reactive striking takedown. A reactive striking takedown is I'm reacting to your strike. So you come to punch me, I have to be good enough to now close in and overhook your arm into a throw. If you kick, I have to read the kick, I have to catch the kick into a throw. And you could see how well they teach it in Combat Sambo. I mean, they are just so effective at this kind of fighting. Look, and Jeff Chan is not being thrown easy here. These throws are hardcore. But if you look, he's teaching them how to come in off the punch, off the grab, off the kick. It's exactly what you want to see in your training. Listen, anyone who's around a Combat Sambo school is very lucky. Here's some highlights. Just look at some of the insanity that is Combat Sambo. These tough dudes. They also just have this is just some Sambo in here too. You could tell the difference between Sambo and Combat Sambo. Sambo is just the sport aspect without striking. Combat Sambo is like what looks like the MMA crazy aspect. But even, and I'll do a whole other video on sports Sambo, not Combat Sambo. But again, look, I just want to show you the difference. Look how clean he goes into a knee, into a throw. Like he's just so seamless of his strikes into his takedowns. Beautiful sweep. One thing you'll notice also, one more point about Combat Sambo guys, before I end this very long video, is that Combat Sambo guys are very, very good at sweeps. Another difference between this and, let's say, wrestling is the gi. It's a very unique gi, right? You don't have pants, the kimono, whatever you want to call it, the uniform. They don't have pants. They're not as reliant on grips. If you look at them, it was always something so interesting to me the way, because I did Sambo. One of the most interesting things to me about Sambo was we have the gi on, but we're not necessarily hyper fixated on grabbing it and holding it. You will sometimes, but you're really going for a takedown quick once you get your grip. But there's a lot of overhook and underhook control, fireman carry, that kind of stuff, which is like you just saw there, which is incredible. Like if you look here, they're not 100% reliant most of the time on the gi. They're doing a lot of head and arm control. It's just almost like a no-gi system that's still using the gi sometimes. I always thought that was so interesting compared to judo, which is so gi heavy, which you have to grab and get your controls. You rarely see judo guys fighting for underhooks and overhooks and belt control in the same way as Sambo guys. I'm going to play this next one. This next one has music, and the reason I'm playing it is because it just reminds me of the 80s, and it's just like feels like the start of a Sambo movie.
Was no fighter. Sambo trained every day.
Push it to the limit.
Oh yeah.
Walk along the razor's edge. But don't look down, just keep your head or you'll be finished.
All right. It got weird, guys. It got weird. I think that's my cue to end this video. I can't end it. I got to go back into the music full time.
Hit the wheel and double the stakes. Throttle wide open like a bat out of hell. You crash the gates.
Oh, beautiful spinning kick. I'm sorry, guys. I just love this style. Okay, wait. I didn't say the negatives. I'm going to say the negatives real quickly. The only negative is injuries. Lifespan of the martial art. This is a martial art where you do incur injuries. Every major injury I've had has been off grappling. Like hard grappling, like this. And even worse, the throws and everything are very wild and very hard. And like you can get neck injuries, back injuries, knee injuries, torn ACLs, shoulder injuries. This is just one of those styles where you're going to incur injuries, 100%. And if you haven't been thrown, like you need to feel it to understand it. Even on a mat like this kind of soft ground, it hurts. It hurts. It takes the wind out of you. Sometimes you see like flashing lights after you get thrown hard. Getting thrown is not easy on the body, period, end of story. Those are my only negatives though. And that it's hard to find a combat Sambo school. What I will say is that you'll never find a bad one in my experience. If you come across a combat Sambo school, just by the very nature of the style, they will be good. You will get good training. And then you could put your background music like this for your life. You'll be one of these guys.
While you're still living.
That's all I got for you guys today. Combat Sambo, excellent style. Can't say anything negative about it other than the high risk of injury. And there's a reason why so many of these guys are doing so well in MMA nowadays. Great system. Hope you enjoyed this video. Like and subscribe.